Are you constantly triggered by your children? Or maybe your partner triggers you all the time? In this video, I'll show you how you can get over your triggers with my 5-step process. Hello, beautiful mamas. I'm Kristina. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm here to help you become the best version of yourself for your children and the children of the future. Like I said, today's video is all about triggers in parenting, and I'll give you my 5-step process how you can begin to heal. So the first part, I'll just dive into a bit of what triggers are, and the second part, I'll talk about where they come from, why we have triggers, and the third part of this video will be my process of how you can begin to heal your triggers. So let's dive into part 1. What are triggers? So triggers are just an intense emotional response to something or someone. We've all heard the term that you've been triggered, and most of us, majority of the time, we've probably been triggered. And as parents, probably our children have triggered us, or maybe our partners have triggered us. So triggers are just an emotional response. They're very rapid. They can come out of nowhere. You can lead to shouting at your children, or just very intense crying. And quite often, triggers are mostly internal. And just what this means is, even though something on the outside may have triggered you, how you are reacting is rooted in what you are thinking and feeling on the inside. But part 2 of this video, where do triggers come from? What causes us to be triggered? So the main reason why you are triggered is because you have some kind of trauma. And majority of our trauma comes from childhood. And there are other ways you can experience trauma, but for the purpose of this video and my channel, I'm just going to focus on childhood trauma because that relates to our children and parenting. Usually means you've been through some kind of traumatic event as a child. Did you view the world as something that was safe or unsafe? It's how you experienced the world when you were younger. And quite often we hold on to these feelings of how we felt during those traumatic events. I just want to make this quick side note though. Everyone has their own way of filtering out things. And when we go through something traumatic, how we view that traumatic event, what we all hold on to, and the story and the meaning we give it is all different between every person, because we all have like different personalities, different emotional agilities and stuff, that how we process things, we're all different. So for example, 3 children might go through the same traumatic event, but each one of them is highly likely to give a different story of what they perceive to happen. So we all filter what we feel is true for an event. So I just wanted to make that quick side note. And it's not about the actual event itself, it's about the emotion and how we are feeling and what it is telling us internally, and how we feel about that's what we hold on to. But ultimately, triggers are telling you that you have wounds, you have unhealed trauma, unhealed wounds. Your inner child is wounded. And I've got another video on the inner child, and you can watch that after this video. I'll just put the link in the description box below, and that just goes over what the inner child is and how you can reconnect to your inner child too. And because we have these wounds, we tend to lash out and react because we've been triggered, and then this leads us to projecting our emotions onto obviously our children, for example. Then that puts us in a victim mindset, and you start to begin to blame your children. You start to say, well, if you hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have shouted. And you start just beginning to blame them, and you go into cycle of victim mindset, a negative mindset. And again, I've got another video on positive mindset, and I'll put that in the description box below, and that will just help you shift from a negative mindset to a positive one as parent. But quite often, children are wonderful mirrors. They reflect to us our own childhood wounds. So they're the ones that always trigger us. And it's so beautiful because we can use children as our healers, our spiritual teachers, that help bring that awareness to us. And they always bring up that emotion you would have felt as a child. So for example, you might get triggered if your child makes a huge mess, starts just throwing toys all over the floor, then all of a sudden you just snap and you get triggered. And this could be because you grew up in a very messy home, so it brings back that emotion of growing up in a messy home, and you just want to be this clean freak. You hate mess because of that. And my personal trigger, I'll go a bit vulnerable here, my own personal trigger from my son, just when he won't go to sleep at night. Oh my God, some nights it's very hard. Some nights, majority of the time, I would say about 95% of the time, he goes to sleep instantly. But the nights that he just takes forever, and I'm just like, why won't he go to sleep? And I can feel myself building up. Whilst triggers, most often you just snap instantly, but I can feel myself building up, getting more and more across the longer he's taking to get to sleep. And then I just snap. I don't like shout at him or anything. I just want to scream, and I've got to get my partner and get him to take over before I just go insane. You can get triggered by your children for many other reasons, but you've got to remember it's always important to show compassion to your child, help them to understand why you might have shouted, help them to replay that story to them so it can help you understand what they're thinking about that situation as well. And always a great little tip as well is to change your perception on what your child is doing. Did they make a mess or throw toys across the room just because they're bored? They've got too many toys, there's too much going on in their environment, they want your attention. Is change the meaning you're giving it. I just want to make this little side note again. It's just that your ego will tend to keep you in the victim mindset. Your ego wants you to stay safe, stay small, not grow, not become aware of your wounds and your triggers. So quite often your ego will always blame somebody else when actually it's all about you and your internal wounds. Ignore what the ego is telling you. So this leads me on to the third part of this video, which is my 5-step process to help you heal your wounds. And again, I just want to make another side note as well. You've got to get to the core wound. You cannot just deal with the trigger, you can't just deal with it or cope with it. You've got to get to the wound. You've got to peel that plaster off. You've got to get to the wound. So the first part of this process is acknowledge you've been triggered, or you've been triggered in the past. So if you feel like you're triggered in that moment, just take a minute and go, okay, I've been triggered. I understand I've been triggered, or I've been triggered in the past. Just acknowledge that. So that leads me to the second part. Talk to your inner child. And I do this all the time. And you can just simply go, you're safe, you are loved, you are worthy, you are heard, you are seen, and you are supported. Because quite often the inner child is not feeling loved. That's why you lash out. Obviously you've got these wounds, and it usually all comes down to not feeling loved. So talk to your inner child, reassure, even if you don't want to call it your inner child, reassure yourself, and this will help settle down the ego and stop the ego from chatting that and blaming everybody else and not looking at yourself. So it just helps calm the mind down and just talk and reassure yourself. So number 3, face your wounds. This takes a lot of courage. And this is the part where you've just got to go in and begin to face your wounds, and do this when you feel you are ready. And this is what I recommend you do. So you need to go into kind of a meditation for this, and you can get many guided meditations on inner child meditations, just trigger meditations. Just you can just search them on YouTube. And what you can do as well before you go into the meditation, set the intention that you are ready to face your wounds, and just say out loud something along the lines is, I am ready, please show me my wounds. I go into this meditation with no judgment and neutrality, because that's important, to go into the meditation with no judgment and just with an open mind, being shown your wounds. So number 3, sit with the emotion. So this just means whenever you feel the emotion begin to come up, when you remember the wound, the memory, the event, the trauma, sit with the emotion, allow it to surface, really, really feel that emotion. This is the key, is to feel that emotion. This helps to process the emotion, because when you were a child, you were unable to process the emotion, because most childhood trauma happens between birth and 7 years old. And at that age, you just didn't learn how to process emotions, so you held on to the emotion. You've suppressed it and obviously repressed it as well. So feeling that emotion gives you this chance now to really process it, let out a good cry. Number 5, journaling. This can really, really help as well to help process the emotion, and can be another form to help bring any memories or the emotion to surface. And I find this to be so powerful. It really helps me with my own healing. And you can just simply get a piece of paper or notepad or something and just write down anything you can begin to remember, or start beginning to write about a memory that you have that's quite traumatic, and then just go from there. And then you'll find it will start flowing, and then you'll bring up the emotion, and it'll help to process that emotion as well. And you can do this as well as meditating, or instead, but I recommend you do all of these in order. But if you're in that moment of feeling triggered, do the first 2. So acknowledge you're being triggered, and then just reassure your child, and then you can go just carry on with your day, just calm down a bit, and then go back, reassure yourself, and go back. So yeah, that's it. There you have it. There's my 5-step process to help you heal your inner child wounds, your triggers, whatever you like to call it. Give this video a thumbs up if you like this video, and if you want to see more videos like this on conscious parenting, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the bell notification, because that bell notification it notifies you when I've created a new video. And you can follow me on Instagram as well, and on there I'll be sharing more conscious parenting tips. I'll see you on the next video. Much love.